We typically, during the week, will go on a date night Thursdays. And so when Valentine's comes around, we like to include the kids. So we'll do a fancy dinner at home.
It was supposed to be another ordinary day on set for Joanna Gaines. Camera crews rolling, blueprints in hand, and the next big Magnolia reveal underway. But in a stunning moment that stopped production cold, Joanna suddenly collapsed just seconds before the next scene was set to shoot. Emergency responders were rushed in. Crew members stood frozen. And within the hour, the co-founder of Magnolia was quietly rushed to the hospital. No cameras captured the panic. No statements were released to the public. But behind the glossy curtain of the Gaines empire, something had cracked. Just days later, her husband Chip Gaines would cancel every scheduled appearance, walk away from a multi-million-dollar television contract, and retreat from the spotlight with a single mission: to stand by his wife's side. For fans of Fixer Upper, this wasn't just a health scare. It was a seismic shift that shook the foundation of the Magnolia brand. What followed was a trail of subtle clues, leaked behind-the-scenes videos, cryptic social media posts, and silent absences from promotional events that spoke louder than any press release. Rumors began to swirl about a dangerous autoimmune condition, about halted projects, and about a beloved couple facing their hardest renovation yet, not of a house, but of their lives. And as the Gaines family fell largely silent, the public's curiosity exploded. What really happened on that set? Why did Chip put everything on hold? And how has Magnolia, the media empire they built with bare hands and boundless heart, managed to survive while its core was missing? Over the next few minutes, we'll piece together the real story, drawn from exclusive reports, eyewitness accounts, and the subtle messages Magnolia never intended to broadcast. This isn't just a tale of illness. It's a story of resilience, transformation, and the quiet power of choosing love over legacy. But to truly understand how everything changed, we have to rewind to the first signs. Those small, easily missed warnings that started long before Joanna ever fell. By late 2024, Joanna Gaines was still smiling for cameras and sketching her signature open-plan kitchens on set, but beneath the polished exterior, the first signs of something deeply wrong had already begun to surface. As filming for Minnie Renee entered full swing, sources inside Magnolia described a version of Joanna that felt dimmed, visibly thinner, frequently exhausted, and unusually withdrawn between takes. For a woman known to breeze through marathon shoots with clipboard in hand and a calm command of every detail, it was quietly alarming to see her needing to sit down between scenes, or pausing to rub her ribs before bending over a blueprint. Crew members, long familiar with her work ethic, whispered concerns as they watched her movement slow, her posture sag, and her voice, once steady and commanding, grow faint. But the schedule was tight, the spotlight unrelenting, and the Gaineses, ever professional, kept moving. Joanna brushed off worries with quick smiles and vague mentions of being a little run down, but internally, the strain was mounting. Observers noted that even her off-camera interactions had changed. She skipped production dinners, avoided photo ops, and began spending more time in isolation between filming blocks. Yet, outwardly, Magnolia continued to project its signature: warmth and vibrancy. The brand's social feeds glowed with sun-drenched shots of home transformations and family joy, giving fans no hint of the growing toll behind the scenes. And in interviews from the period, Joanna spoke about the challenges of balancing motherhood and business, but never once hinted at the looming health crisis. At the time, no one could have predicted what was coming, but in hindsight, these were the tremors before the earthquake. And that earthquake would hit in full force one cold morning in February 2025 when everything came to a halt. Not in business strategy or branding, but in real life. The collapse came without warning. On a chilly February morning in 2025, as cameras were lining up for the next Minnie Renee renovation reveal, director cues were being called and lights adjusted. Just another moment in the controlled chaos of television production. But as the countdown to action began, Joanna Gaines, standing near the freshly staged living room, suddenly staggered, clutched her side, and crumpled to the floor. Silence fell like a curtain. For a split second, the crew believed it was part of a scene. Then panic erupted. Production halted immediately, medics on site rushed forward, and a protective circle formed around her as Chip, who had just stepped off set, came running back. Witnesses say the filming schedule was instantly scrapped, and an hour later, under tight privacy protocols, Joanna was escorted off the premises and admitted to a nearby hospital. For days, there was no official word. Those closest to the situation signed non-disclosure agreements, and Magnolia issued no press release. But internal communications painted a more urgent picture. Doctors had discovered severe abnormalities in her immune system, raising alarms about systemic complications that couldn't be ignored. Extensive rounds of tests began, and by week's end, physicians reportedly suspected systemic lupus erythematosus, a serious autoimmune disorder that can target the skin, joints, kidneys, and even vital organs. It wasn't a definitive diagnosis, but the warning was clear. The only way forward was immediate, full-stop rest and long-term medical oversight. The implications for Magnolia's production pipeline were significant, but inside the Gaines family, a far greater question loomed: how to support Joanna through a condition that might never fully recede. While the public continued watching Mini Renee reruns, unaware of the sudden vacuum forming behind the scenes, those on the inside had already begun bracing for a shift that would change everything. And as the world remained in the dark, the silence from Magnolia's top brass only deepened, hinting that something far more personal and fragile was unfolding behind closed doors. In the days following Joanna Gaines's collapse, the vacuum of information became its own kind of headline. For fans accustomed to transparency from the Magnolia founders, whether it was about design decisions, parenting struggles, or career pivots, the abrupt silence was deafening. Joanna, once a consistent and calming voice in the Magnolia machine, had vanished from all press engagements. Her social media accounts went dark. Scheduled appearances were canceled with minimal explanation. Then, in mid-March, as murmurs turned into full-blown speculation, Magnolia Network released a brief statement on its website. Joanna is taking time to care for herself and her family. We thank everyone for their support. Just 20 words, carefully, vague, purposefully soft, but they confirmed one thing: something serious was happening. Meanwhile, behind the walls of Magnolia's Waco offices, the team had already been briefed on a possible autoimmune condition. Sources close to the production team confirmed whispers of a suspected diagnosis: systemic lupus erythematosus. But unlike past situations, such as Joanna's 2023 back surgery, which was addressed in a cheerful blog post, this time, the decision was to stay silent. Medical details remained unconfirmed, and without an official diagnosis, the Gaineses refused to offer half-truths to the public. Still, the signs kept slipping through. Leaked footage showed Joanna being helped into a car, head down, visibly drained. Fans picked apart her rare public sightings for clues. Was that a medical bracelet? Why was Chip alone at the last product launch? The speculation gained momentum online, with threads on Reddit and Instagram fan pages dissecting everything from her posture to her wardrobe for hidden meaning. Health blogs jumped into the frenzy, offering amateur medical theories based on freeze frames of her last appearance on set. Through it all, Chip and Joanna said nothing. That silence, far from dulling the drama, only amplified it. In the vacuum left behind, rumors of everything from burnout to cancer circulated freely. But what the public didn't know was that, internally, the Gaines family had already made the decision to step away from business as usual. And as pressure mounted from the press, sponsors, and even their network partners, it was Chip, usually the comic relief, who would soon emerge as Magnolia's quiet protector. When the silence from Joanna became impossible to ignore, it was Chip Gaines who finally offered the world a glimpse into the family's new reality, but he did it without a single word. In late March 2025, a photograph appeared on Chip's personal Instagram. His hand gently wrapped around Joanna's as they sat together, a beam of soft light streaming in from a nearby window. The caption was brief and poetic. The light is always there, but sometimes it needs a little protection to continue shining. No formal health update, no media tour, just a quiet confirmation that something was deeply wrong. Within 48 hours, the post had garnered millions of likes and shares, and for the first time, fans and followers realized Joanna's absence wasn't just a break, it was a crisis. Almost immediately, the ripple effects began. First came the abrupt cancellation of a major Today Show appearance, where the couple was scheduled to unveil the launch plans for Magnolia's next series slate. Then, in what shocked both executives and longtime viewers, Chip declined a lucrative offer from HGTV to relaunch Fixer Upper in a modern international format, a deal reportedly worth tens of millions over 3 years. Sources close to the negotiations confirmed that the talks were paused indefinitely due to personal reasons on the producer's side, and it quickly became evident that Chip was no longer entertaining the idea of moving forward without Joanna. Instead of pushing on, he began pulling back. In early April, Chip issued an internal memo stating he was suspending all personal filming and promotional activities for the remainder of the year. He relinquished his role as executive producer on several upcoming projects and reassigned creative control to trusted team members at Blind Nil, the Gaines' longtime post-production partner. What surprised many was the totality of his withdrawal. This was a man who had built an empire while swinging sledgehammers and cracking jokes on camera, now stepping away from the very foundation he'd laid. Behind the scenes, employees began noticing subtle changes. Chip leaving the office earlier than usual, taking long walks alone around the Magnolia grounds, and spending more time at home with their 5 children. He wasn't just adjusting his schedule, he was redefining his role. And while he never stood in front of a microphone to say it aloud, the message was clear. Chip Gaines was choosing to protect his family, even if it meant putting the future of Magnolia on pause. As Chip Gaines stepped away from the limelight, the full weight of his decision began to cascade across the Magnolia empire, disrupting everything from shooting schedules to executive planning. Mini Renee, originally pitched as a flagship expansion of the Gaines brand, suddenly shifted into low gear. Episodes were trimmed, filming was postponed, and quietly, Joanna's name was removed from upcoming promotional materials as executive producer, a signal that her absence was not temporary. Within Magnolia Network, longtime staffers described an atmosphere of hushed urgency. Meetings still happened, but without their familiar anchors. Chip's production office, once filled with whiteboards, architectural plans, and bursts of laughter, now sat mostly empty. Behind the scenes, management scrambled to keep things moving while preserving the public image of calm. Meanwhile, fans were beginning to notice the growing void. When Joanna failed to appear at the internal premiere of Mini Renee in April, speculation reignited. The whispers had already started with a leaked behind-the-scenes clip, showing her being helped into a waiting car, clearly fatigued and pale. The network didn't comment, and neither did the couple, fueling online discourse that veered into obsession. Health blogs dissected every new shot of the Gaines home in Waco, while social media sleuths scoured Chip's Instagram posts for hidden meanings. Despite the swirling rumors, Magnolia remained outwardly professional, issuing vague updates, reshuffling episode air dates, and quietly putting new pilot projects on indefinite hold. The business machine didn't stop entirely, but it slowed significantly. Internally, Chip issued another directive. No press interviews, no new launches, no unnecessary media exposure. Deals with longtime sponsors were either postponed or renegotiated. Plans for a Magnolia Network summer press tour were canceled altogether. Key projects in pre-production were transferred to Blind Nil's independent oversight, giving Chip the space he needed while avoiding a full shutdown. But even with the safety nets in place, the brand felt the absence. Viewers wrote in, asking about Joanna. Retail traffic dipped. And the Magnolia Journal, once known for its seasonal bursts of inspiration, published a notably pared-down issue that spring. It wasn't a collapse, but it was a pause. Intentional, reflective, and deeply personal. And, as public curiosity reached a boiling point, the story would soon shift focus. Not to the boardroom, but to the living room of the Gaines home, where the next generation was preparing to hold the empire together. While the media buzzed with unanswered questions and business operations downshifted to a hush, a new and unexpected force quietly began to emerge from within the Gaines household. Their children, particularly 17-year-old Ella, were no longer just fixtures in the background of a family brand. They were stepping into roles with real weight. As Joanna remained largely bedridden through the early stages of her treatment, Ella, who had been interning casually at Magnolia since the previous fall, began taking on increasing responsibilities. What started as note-taking during internal, Mini Renee meetings quickly evolved into a more structured position, relaying design edits from Joanna via short phone calls, overseeing email threads with partners like Target, and even coordinating Magnolia Network's social media tone to maintain brand consistency. Without ceremony or title, she became the go-between for a mother too ill to lead and a company too precious to abandon. But Ella wasn't alone. MEK, the couple's younger daughter, began helping prepare the family's meals based on nutritionist instructions, often color-coding menus on the refrigerator with cheerful pink markers. Duke, the middle son, quietly started accompanying Chip to office meetings, jotting notes and passing along feedback for Joanna to review when she had the energy. And Crew, the youngest, simply asked, "How's mommy today?" Every time he came home from preschool, his concern as sincere and grounding as any executive memo. These were not staged moments or orchestrated PR strategies. They were lived realities, captured in whispers and glances, in a family working together without needing to be asked. One emotional turning point came when all 5 children gathered in the Magnolia warehouse to inspect physical copies of the brand's upcoming seasonal magazine. Caught on a security feed Joanna watched from her hospital bed, the footage made her cry, not from pain, but from the overwhelming realization that she was not holding everything up alone. Later, Ella would edit that moment, along with snippets of dinner conversations and backyard laughter, into a 45-second tribute video posted to Magnolia Network's official Instagram. It drew nearly 4 million views in just 3 days and reminded followers that Magnolia was never just about rustic interiors or farmhouse chic. It was always at its core about family. And as Joanna's body fought to recover, it was her children who helped preserve her legacy. Not by doing everything she once did, but by doing only what mattered most. By mid-2025, it became clear that Chip and Joanna Gaines weren't simply weathering a crisis. They were quietly redrawing the blueprint of their lives. The transition wasn't dramatic or formalized with press statements, but rather unfolded through a series of intentional silences and soft pivots. In June, Joanna made her first appearance in over 3 months at a closed-door internal gathering in Magnolia Market, organized secretly by Ella and a handful of senior staffers. There were no cameras, no media invites, just a modest setup of product booths, photos from earlier design shoots, and a banner that read, "Welcome home, Mom." Those present said Joanna entered in a long coat and cap, slimmer but standing, tall, and wept openly as the room erupted in applause. Crew ran up to hug her leg, whispering something that made her laugh. Ella guided her through each station, describing what the team had maintained in her absence. Joanna said little but resumed a familiar habit, straightening corners, brushing her fingers along fabric textures, instinctively correcting the lighting on a display. The designer in her had not disappeared, she had merely retreated. Following that event, Joanna did not rush back to her full workload. Instead, she limited her involvement to short phone calls, handwritten design notes, and quiet brainstorms with Ella. She began documenting her experiences in a private treatment journal, which Chip later encouraged her to turn into a memoir, a deeply personal project now in the works under the Magnolia Books imprint. Meanwhile, Chip remained in his protective orbit. While no official resignation was ever filed, he stayed away from filming, paused public appearances, and shifted executive duties to Magnolia's top leadership team, who now operated with more autonomy and remote input. The couple wasn't handing off the empire, but they were reshaping their positions within it. For fans who once saw Joanna as the multitasking Wonder Woman and Chip as the ever-present entertainer, this new version of the Gaineses was sobering but inspiring. They were no longer trying to do it all. They were choosing what to carry and what to release. Their silence was not absence. It was a recalibration. The empire was still standing, but its foundation had shifted from ambition to authenticity, from growth to grace. And as their roles quietly changed, so did the rhythm of Magnolia, adapting not to market trends but to the heartbeat of its founders. Looking back, it's almost poetic how the empire Chip and Joanna Gaines built, a brand rooted in restoring broken homes, would come to face its most powerful transformation, not through expansion, but through slowing down. What began in 2013 as a home renovation show with heart, Fixer Upper evolved into a full-fledged cultural movement. Magnolia Market, Hearth in Hand, a best-selling magazine, and eventually a television network bearing their name. For years, Joanna shaped the interior design aesthetic of a generation, while Chip became the face of loyalty, laughter, and fatherhood. Together, they were more than TV hosts. They were a symbol of values in motion, faith, family, and finding beauty in imperfection. But when Joanna collapsed in early 2025, the brand they built faced a deeper reckoning. Not a financial one. Magnolia remained sound, but a spiritual one. Their choices in the months that followed weren't about preserving profit margins. They were about protecting people. With Joanna's health condition suspected to be systemic lupus, the couple stopped performing and started living in a way that quietly echoed everything they had always preached. No flashy comebacks, no dramatic goodbyes, just a firm pause and a redirection of energy toward what mattered most. And in doing so, they inadvertently authored a new chapter of their legacy, one written not with shiplap and farmhouse sinks, but with the quiet dignity of retreat. Even their children's involvement signaled something more enduring than branding. Ella's rise, Duke's quiet note-taking, MEK's kitchen efforts, all illustrated a new generation absorbing not just the business, but the values behind it. Magnolia, once a spotlight-driven machine, had become a slower, deeper rhythm, its operations still intact, but running on grace and stewardship. As for what comes next, insiders suggest Joanna's recovery is ongoing, and her memoir is being developed as a private reflection, not a publicity tool. Chip has not ruled out a return to public-facing work, but continues to defer those decisions in favor of family time. Magnolia executives operate under quiet guidance, the reins loosely held but never abandoned. And for fans, this pivot has been both heartbreaking and heartening, a reminder that sometimes the strongest foundation isn't built in front of cameras, but behind closed doors, in the stillness of prioritizing what no contract can replace. The Gaineses haven't disappeared. They've simply done what they've always done best, taken something broken, something painful, and begun the slow, sacred work of rebuilding it, with intention, humility, and love. In a world driven by headlines, hustle, and endless reinvention, the story of Chip and Joanna Gaines stands out not for its noise, but for its quiet strength. This wasn't a scandal, a fall from grace, or a PR-managed rebrand. It was a human pause, the kind that few celebrities are willing to take, especially when the stakes involve millions of followers, business deals, and a sprawling empire. When Joanna collapsed that February morning, it marked more than a medical emergency. It signaled a seismic shift in how the couple would move forward, not as public figures, but as partners and parents first. What followed was not broadcasted, not filtered, and not monetized. It was raw, real, and deeply intentional. Chip's seismic retreat from the spotlight, Joanna's choice to stay behind the scenes, and their children's quiet rise into responsibility revealed a family truly living the values they've spent over a decade promoting. And in that stillness, something remarkable happened. Magnolia didn't fall. It found its footing again, not on magazine covers or HGTV schedules, but in garden walks, hand-drawn design notes, whispered goodnights, and a handwritten journal. That might one day become a book of healing. For viewers and fans who followed them since the first Fixer-Upper, this chapter reminds us that resilience isn't loud. Sometimes it looks like saying no, like disappearing from social media, or like a child asking, "How's mommy today?" around the dinner table. It looks like faith in the unseen and choosing people over performance. As the Gaines family rewrites what success means, they offer a blueprint more enduring than any home renovation ever could. And perhaps that's the real legacy. Not the homes they've built, but the foundation they've strengthened beneath their own. If this story moved you, consider sharing it with someone who needs a reminder that even in moments of retreat, there can be quiet triumphs. Leave a comment below, because sometimes just a single word of support is enough to lift someone up. And if you want more stories that go beyond the headlines and into the heart, be sure to like, subscribe, and stay with us for the next chapter in real-life journeys that matter.